Hi friends, welcome to WafaStudies YouTube channel. This is part 3 in PySpark playlist. In this video, we are going to discuss about how we can read CSV file data into DataFrame using PySpark. If you have watched my previous videos, by this time you already know what is DataFrame and what is PySpark also. So please watch before videos of the PySpark videos, that means first video and second video before watching this video. All the videos will be with a logical link, with a logical sequence. So I will be taking you in this playlist from the basics to advanced concepts. So watching the videos in the order will actually help you to get a most of every video. So in this particular video we are going to discuss about how we can read. It can be a single CSV file or multiple CSV files or all CSV files. So basically like reading a CSV files into data frame using PySpark. So if you have a one single file, then how to do that? If you have multiple CSV files, then how to do that? If you have a folder with all CSV files, then how to do that? So that is what we are going to discuss in this video. So let's go here. So in PySpark there is something called CSV method or function which is available on top of the DataFrameReader object that will help you to read the CSV file. Not only that, you can use this format function along with this load function as well to read the CSV file into a data frame. So this sentence may be confusing at this moment. What is DataFrameReader object and what is this methods and all? When I practically show you that, you will make more sense of it. So let me go to browser where I have already opened my Databricks workspace, and here if I navigate to compute menu, you can see one cluster is already available. Let's go to workspaces, let's go to users, let me go to my user ID, and here let's try to create a new notebook here. So let me name this notebook like read CSV files. Python is the default language I am using, and let me hit create button to create the notebook. You can see this URL is now pointing to some notebook, but usually this UI sometimes takes some time to load the notebook. If that doesn't happen, what you can do, you can try to refresh the browser as well. So now you can see my notebook is opened and my notebook is connected with my cluster, whatever it is already available. So now what I said is there is something called DataFrameReader object. On top of that, you can use this CSV method or format and load methods to read the CSV file. So what I mean by that? So from my previous videos, you already know that there is something called Spark, right? Spark is a object that will give a Spark session type of object. In my part 1 video and second video, you already know that. So if you don't know that also, let's use this help function. To this help function, I am passing this Spark object. So this object will come automatically in the Databricks. Even if it is a synapse, it is the same case. So let me hit shift enter button to execute this, and this help function, as I said in my previous video, will give complete documentation of any object or a method. It clearly says in the documentation this particular object is type of Spark session, and see this on top of this particular object there are so many. So I am not going to read this entire documentation, you can read it, but I will point to the exact locations which I am concerned about. So inside this entire documentation, what and all the methods defined on top of the Spark session object are clearly mentioned under this heading. And if I scroll down here, there is something called create data frame method, which I have discussed in my last video, like how to create a data frame with hard coded values, right? So this function we discussed there. And if I scroll down little bit more, you will be seeing there is a method or there is a property called function, called read. Let me show you that. So let me scroll down. All these are the functions which are available. Now here these are like a class methods which are defined. So let me scroll down here as well, and here you can see there are some properties defined on top of that Spark object, that means Spark session object. Here if you closely see under this property section, you will see there is something called read property. So read property will actually give you a data frame reader object. You can read this documentation here. So spark.read property will give you a object which is data frame reader type. Okay, so that means here if I go back and here right on top of the Spark I put the dot, and when I say control space, it will give you the entire intelligence. If you see I am using this read, and it says read is nothing but like it's a instance, so it is going to give one instance. Instance is nothing but like a object. Okay, so and when I use this, and when I use this instance or object in the help function, let me hit shift enter to execute this once again. It says that this instance or this object is going to be data frame reader type. That is what it is going to say. And inside this data frame reader type object also there are so many functions. And if you see the, if you remember the documentation what I said just now, so this data frame reader object contains this CSV method or format.load methods that will help you to read the CSV files. So let me go here. So right now we are seeing data frame reader type documentation, and if I scroll down here, so let me scroll down and let me see the methods defined here. There is something called CSV method, and this CSV method will take so many parameters. All these parameters it will take. Few will be mandatory parameters, few will be optional parameters. Parameter means the data which we pass into the function or method when we are calling it, and this is going to load the CSV file, and it is going to return the data frame. That is what it is trying to say here. And if I scroll down, each parameter like path parameter can be a string or it can be a list. That is what it is going to tell you. And if you scroll down, for each and every parameter it will have a definition, and it will have some examples also here. You can go through these examples and everything very clearly. So now from this documentation it is very clear that there is something called CSV method that will help you to load a CSV file which is available inside this data frame reader object, right? CSV method. And not only that, if you see the presentation, I also said format. Inside a format we can define it's a CSV format and the load function. So the same thing will be available here as well. So format function also will be available. So if I scroll CSV method we have seen here. So let me scroll down. Definitely we will be seeing a format method also, where you can specify the format of the underlying data source. So if it is a format of CSV, then you will specify CSV. If it is a JSON, you will specify JSON. If it is a Parquet, then you will specify the Parquet. So for everything there are examples available here. You can go through that, and once you use the format, you can use a load function to take the file. So that is what this definition is going to tell you. So now let's try to understand how to read a single CSV file into a data frame first, and then we will see how to read multiple CSV files and also all the CSV files into data frame. So let's go back to our data frame, so the Databricks studio here, and here, so Spark control space will always give you intelligence dot read. Then whenever I am putting that, I am hitting control space to get intelligence. So let's use this CSV function, and to the CSV function, if you see the intelligence, there is something called a path parameter. To the path parameter we have to supply a string or a list. We have already seen. I am not going to the documentation detailedly, you can read it. So here in the path we have to supply path. So let me do one thing. So let me go to this data menu, and every Databricks will come with a Databricks file system, right? If you don't know, please watch my Databricks playlist. So I don't see here Databricks file system menu here, right? So let me do one thing. Let me go to admin console, and let me go to workspace settings, and here let me scroll down, and here let me enable this Databricks file system file browser for us, so that we can manually browse through that location and then upload some file there, and that file we are going to read it using a CSV method and load it into a data frame. So I refresh the browser. Let me go to data menu. Now I can see Databricks file system here. So under file store, let's go to file store, and under file store let's try to create a new folder, and let's try to give a name for this folder, maybe like data. Okay, so data is the folder name. Now inside a data folder, let's try to upload some files. So let me click upload. Let me click this drag files to upload space here, and I have two employees here, employee1.csv file, employee2.csv file. Let me open this, and let me copy this path for now, or no need. Let me click this done button. So I have uploaded two CSV files here into a Databricks file system. So now let's try to see what data we have inside these CSV files. So in my local I have already opened, so on the desktop there is something called Mahir work folder. Inside it I have some sample files folder. This is where I have employees1.csv file and employees2.csv file. So let me open these two files. In the employees1.csv file I have two employees, Mahir and Pradeep, and then let me minimize. In the employees2.csv file also I have two employees. Let me open you and show you that. So in the employees.csv file, I have Wafa and Sarfraz. So we have two employees in the employee 1 file, two employees in a employee 2 file. So the same files I have uploaded into Databricks file system. Now let's go to workspace and then let's go to our notebook which we were creating here. So let me go to this read CSV files notebook here, and if the notebook is immediately not open, so you can refresh also. And here let's try to give a path of that file. So for that, let me go to data menu and once again dbfs, and let me go to file store and let data folder, and let's click this arrow here and copy the path. So this is the path of the file. So let me copy this, close, and let's go to the notebook. So I am giving a path. So this, from this path, it is going to read a CSV file data and it is going to return a data frame, right? So that data frame, let's try to store in a variable called df. And once we store that, here let's try to use something called display function. To the display function, I am passing df variable, my data frame variable. And also on top of data frame, when I hit control space for the intelligence, you see there is something called print schema function. This is going to give the schema as well. So now let me hit shift enter button, and this is going to execute this piece of code. It will read the file and create a data frame, and that data frame will be displayed because of this second line. And also we are printing a schema of that data frame. You can see now we are able to read the data frame, that means able to read the CSV file, and also we are able to see the schema also. So every column type came as a string. So in the CSV file, right, every column will come automatically as a string only. Okay, and if you closely observe, there is some small flaw here. See, the column names came as C0, C1, C2, C3, but if you see, my column names are these. So headers are there in my file. So if that is the case, what you have to do, you can use comma, then control space. There is some parameter called in header. So to this parameter you have to supply true. So that means I am telling that inside a CSV file there is a header, and that header is true. So using this you can read the CSV file along with the headers. That time this row, right, first row will become header actually. So let me hit shift enter to execute this code, and now you can see my first row became headers of the data frame, and I have got the column names as well along with the data types. And as I said, since it is a CSV type, by default every column data type will come as a string. But if you want to define some data types, if you know the schema earlier itself, then you can apply that as well. We will see that in just a bit. So this is all good. So now you might be wondering how I know for the header what I have to pass and everything. So that and all from the documentation only. If I go through documentation each and every line, but using that help method, it will take lot of time. So that's why I just shown you at the starting of the video like how to use a help method and all, so you guys can go through that. So not only this way, we can use another way also to create a data frame. So which I said is, so on top of this data reader object, so there is something called format function. To this format function you have to supply the format. So if it is a CSV format, then use a CSV format. If it is a parquet, then use a parquet. Then use, there is something called load. To this load method there is something called path parameter. Inside this path parameter you supply this entire path. So let me copy this entire path of my file, and then here after that there is another parameter called not only that so let me do one thing. Let me execute this code first and see what will happen. So it is going to read a CSV file, but the column names didn't come. So how to make sure column names to come? So not like how we have a format, similarly there is another function called option, where we can supply the options in a key value pairs. So here for the key I will be passing like a header. For a header key, value is going to be, so there is something called a value parameter. For the value I am supplying true. So now if I execute this, what will happen? It is going to read a CSV file and it is going to consider the header as a true, and it is going to take the CSV file from this path and load it into a data frame, and that is what it is displayed here. And you can see the schema also come. So either way is good. You can use this kind of syntax as well, or use directly a functions with the name of the formatter itself. So in that case you no need to use the formatter explicitly, and there are so many options inside the CSV method itself which we can use. For example, comma, if I say like a control space, let me keep my cursor here and control space, see there is so many parameters. For example, if you want to mention like a quote character, then you can use. And also if your CSV file delimiter, so there is something called delimiter, right? Delimiter, so you can use the delimiter also, like if it is a comma, if it is a pipe symbol, so everything we can use. So again, if you don't know all that, simply, as I said, use this help function, and to the help function pass that function name, and you will see the documentation. So I am passing the entire CSV function name here, and you can see there are like encoding, code character, what is the escape character, what is the comment, headers, infer schema. What it will do, it will try to, depending upon the data type, it will try data available in the rows, it will try to predict the data type as well. Okay, so there are so many parameters, so many parameters are available here, you can use all of them. So delimiter also will be there if you closely observe this here somewhere, but I am not going. This null value parameter is also one important parameter, where you can define, like if some specific value is there, then consider it as a null. So to do that, it is available. Okay, and also, like as you said, if for example in your CSV file, if the separator is not comma, then you need to use this parameter. There is something called separator parameter. So for this separator parameter, you can supply like pipe symbol is the column delimiter in your case, then you can use that. So there are so many parameters, you can go through the documentation. Okay, so now we have seen how to read a single CSV file into a data frame, right? So for example, if you have a multiple CSV file, so let's say if I go to workspace, and let's say, and sorry, if I go to data menu, and if I go to Databricks file system, and under the Databricks file system I have a data folder inside which we have one employee file here. So let's assume, let's do one thing, let me create another folder here, and let me name this folder like maybe data1 folder. Okay, so let me create this, and inside this data1 folder, let's try to upload another file. So here click the upload button, and click this draft files or upload, and here let me try to upload employee 2 here. Okay, so let me use it for now, let me click done. So now let's assume from the data folder I want to take the employee1.csv file, and then from the data1 folder I want to take employee2.csv file. And if you remember, inside this file we have employee id 3 and 4, and inside the employee1.csv file we have employee id 1 and 2. So we want to take these two CSV files and load it into a data frame. How to do that? To do that, it is very easy. What you have to do is, here for this path parameter you can supply list as also. So list means like a collection of items, right? So all the path as a collection of items you can pass it. So here I can pass a list, and in the list I will be, first item is going to be a string. So this string which is pointing to the employee1.csv file. Okay, so till here it is fine. So now let's copy this entire string once again, and let me comma paste this here. And if you remember where I have copied employee2 file, under the dbfs file store data1 folder employee2.csv file. So let me change the path accordingly, under data1 folder employee2.csv file. Now if you closely observe, from here to here it is a list, and this list is like collection of string values, and first string value is pointing to one path, and second string value is pointing to another path. So like this, all the paths of the CSV file you have to pass it as a list. Then what it will do, it will try to read all these CSV files data. If the schema is same for all the files, then automatically your data frame will get created without any issues. So let me hit shift enter button to execute this, and let's see what will happen. So let me put my cursor here, and let me hit the shift enter to execute this cell here. Now if you see, it executed successfully, and it is showing 4 employee rows here, and also it is giving the schema also. So as I said, it will be like a string type for every column because it is a CSV file, but we can change it as I said before. So let me close this below cells whatever I have here which I executed previously. This will create a confusion. So now we know that how to read multiple CSV files. Now let's assume all my CSV files are available in a single folder only. For example, if I go to data folder, under Databricks file system, under file store, under data folder I have 2 CSV files. So all these CSV files have a similar schema. So now I want to read all the CSV files using the data CSV function in the PySpark. So how to do that? So for that, what you have to do is, inside this path, right, you can only specify a string path which is pointing to that folder. So let me copy this path till the folder, and then let me delete this entire list here whatever I created for the path parameter, and here I am giving the path which is pointing to the folder, and I am using this path inside a CSV function. Then what it means is, from inside this folder read all the CSV files and load it into Dataframe. So we need to make sure all those CSV files schema is same, then only it will work properly. So now let me hit shift enter button and let's see what will happen. See, my command is running, command executed successfully. See, all the 4 employees details came here. Why? Because this first 2 rows came from employee 1 file, second 2 rows came from the employee 2 file. Okay, so this is how we will do it. So till here it is fine. We have seen how to read a single CSV file, and we have seen how to read multiple CSV files, and we have seen how to read all the CSV files. Now let's assume this data types for all this data frame, right? The data frame schema, every column coming as a string only. Why? Because if it is a CSV file, that's how it comes. But for some reason, you know the data, what kind of data you have in every column. You want to define a data type, or you want to define the schema for the data frame first. That means ID column as an integer, then name is string, gender is string, then again salary is integer. Then how to do that? So for that, if you see inside this CSV function, there is something called schema parameter as well. So there is a schema parameter also, if I am not sure. So if I am not wrong, so let me go here and let me use schema. See, this schema parameter actually takes a schema of data type that will define the entire structure of the schema. So in my past video also we have discussed about there is something called struct type, right? So let me do one thing. From PySpark dot SQL dot types, inside this module we have, let me go to import and then let me hit control space. So there is something called structure type. Using this structure type class, we can create the entire structure of the schema, and that schema we can pass it into the CSV function to apply that schema on top of the data frame. So we can import only structure type also. So, or instead of that, let me import everything from the types module, and here let's create a new variable called schema, and inside this new variable I am going to use struct type. To this struct type function, I am going to use this add function. On top of the add function, you can create a fields. How I know what is struct type and how to use this add function and all? Very easy again. Let me go here. Let me copy this code first. Let me import this all PySpark SQL types here, and then let me use the help function. To the help function, I am supplying struct type. Okay. Now let me hit shift enter button and see what will happen now here. See, documentation came. So struct type is a class, and if I am not going to read this documentation completely, if you scroll down, if you directly see here, it has a examples how to create a structure type which contains multiple fields. That means like a multiple columns as a schema. And see, this is one way of the syntax to do that. Not only that, if I scroll down, there is something called add method inside the structure type class. And if you see the example of this, see, on top of the structure type, add, then create. So from here to here we are creating one column inside that structure, which is column name is 1 and column data type is true, and it won't allow nulls or allow nulls. So this true or false will define whether you want to allow a nulls or not, see, nullable or not, you can see. So let's not go deep in detail. As I said, you can go through this documentation. So basically this add function will help you to add the data types. So what I am going to do here, so let me go back to my cell here, and let me control X, let me remove this, let me execute this code first. So this code execute once this code is executed, right? So okay, there is some error, so let me delete this now, the second cell which I just now created to see the help of the structure type. Let me execute this code now. So why I have to execute this code is, okay, there is some error. We are using a schema parameter but we haven't defined anything. So let me hit shift enter now. So once you execute this code, it will import all these modules as well. Now the schema, the intelligence will come. So let me create a parameter called schema inside this parameter, or inside this variable, sorry. So let's try to create a structure type object. So inside this structure type constructor or a class, we have a method called add. To this method we can supply the field name. So what is my first column name or field name? It is ID, right? So let me give ID as a column name, and I want for this column the data type parameter should be the data type of this column should be integer. So let's use this integer type class here. So this is going to create a column inside the structure type with name ID and data type as integer. So let me copy this here. Then I can write here once again like this, again dot like this. Then the code will be like in a single line, it will go on, right? So instead of that, let's try to split this for our better readability of the code. You can use this slash here, enter, then dot add. So let me hit tab, 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 so that we can see here clearly. So next column name is maybe name, and name column I want to be like a string type. Okay, so let me use string type. Then here slash tab, 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 control V, and third column I want to be like a gender, and this column also let it be like a string type. See, string type values, right? Then slash, let's create a fourth column now. So in the fourth column, the column name is salary, and let's try to define as a integer type. So now we created a schema using the structure type object, and that structure type object will come and store inside this variable. So now to this CSV function, let's try to supply the schema parameter what we have created into the schema parameter value. So now what will happen, it will try to read all the CSV files from this folder, and once it reads, on top of the data frame it will apply this schema. That means ID column as an integer, name column as a string, gender as a string, salary as an integer. So that's what it will happen. I haven't executed this code. If you see the previous execution, every column came as a string. So now let's try to hit shift enter button here inside this cell to execute this, and once the execution completes, now if you see, it is giving ID column as an integer, salary column as an integer. How that magic is happening? While reading a CSV file, I am giving my own schema, because I know the schema, I know that what kind of data it will come under that columns. So I defined the data, or I defined the schema earlier, and then applied that schema on top of my data frame to get that schema. Okay, so let's go back to presentation. I hope that's it in this video. We have discussed like how to read a single CSV file by using this format and load functions. Inside a format, supply the CSV as a formatter, and also we have seen how to read multiple CSV files using a CSV function where we have to give all the paths in a list actually. So in a list, use path 1, path 2, path 3. So there is a small correction here in the syntax. And also we have seen this CSV function that will help you to read all the CSV files, where you have to supply the path to the folder in which you have the CSV files. And also if you want to define a schema on top of the data frame, then you have to use this structure type to create a schema completely by adding some different fields based upon the data we have, and then supplying that schema structure object or structure object into the CSV function to create a data frame with that schema. So we have seen this also just now. So that's it in this video. I hope you got an idea like how we can read a CSV file into a data frame using a PySpark code. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. Press the bell icon to get the notification whenever I add videos. Thank you so much.